Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be hating on PWCC and to an extent PSA. There's a nice little article that I've come across that highlights some of the wrongdoings and or lack of attention being paid by PSA. Almost certainly intentional wrongdoings by PWCC. Unclear if PSA is part of that. Again, this is in the sports world, but if it happens there, now that we're seeing more money in Pokemon, I wouldn't be overly surprised to see it happening there as well. Some of these being a little bit more difficult, but we do see these mistakes made in the Pokemon world, and maybe we'll do a follow-up on that. But for now, let's go through this article. Very well written by, excuse my mispronunciation, if there is one, Shael Ben Ephraim. So here we go. PWCC's a new scam, a grade reviewed by PSA. Some alert collectors have noticed that sports card auction house PWCC has been advertising some of its cards as having had their grades reviewed by PSA. If you know the story of PWCC's connection to PSA, this raises all sorts of red flags. If not, read on and we will explain everything. To understand the significance of PWCC's practice, we need to go back to the biggest scandal ever to plague the hobby. So maybe I'll include a link to this in the description in case you want to click on any of the references throughout the article. Here we go. Operation Bullpen. Starting in the 1990s, the FBI followed severe fraud in the sports memorabilia industry. It began with an operation by the Chicago branch of the Bureau, which they quite cleverly, you have to admit, named Operation Foul Ball. The FBI soon realized this was a national problem. Enter Operation Bullpen. The FBI opened a front sports memorabilia company, the Nihon Trading Company of Oceanside, California. This maneuver put the investigators in contact with many of the most unscrupulous characters in the sports memorabilia industry. The FBI mainly focused on autographs. However, the agency also found and arrested individuals involved in the card industry. That being said, the FBI official website notes that while 2 counterfeiting card rings were also dismantled, the card portion of the industry is relatively unencumbered by fraud. These 2 rings are considered anomalies. One of those anomalies was PWCC. So here we go. We got Brent Hugens, CEO of PWCC Auctions, has long been suspected of knowingly selling altered cards. An industry of fraud. In April 2019, Blowout Forums members noticed several notably altered vintage baseball cards in PSA slabs. After some incredibly impressive sleuthing, the members discovered that PWCC, an Oregon-based auction house, had submitted the vast majority of the cards. PWCC at first refused to take the listing down. In a poorly worded statement, PWCC CEO Brent essentially admitted he was selling altered cards, saying they were conserved. You can see in this interview on the controversial definition of conservation, Hugens insists that as long as there is no evidence of anything having been done to the card has been conserved. People would disagree. I think most, if not all, the trading card community would disagree that you cannot alter a card if it's not detected. But there are some being detected. So users traced the cards to alleged Long Island card fraudster Gary Moser. We saw him in the last video. If you haven't watched the last video, check that out. Maybe I'll put a link in the description and up above. According to repeat allegations, he's been systematically altering genuine sports cards. To be fair, we must add that Moser has never been prosecuted and that he denies all charges. Nonetheless, members of Blowout Forums have brought a good deal of evidence that paints a picture of a genuine scam. The allegations have been substantial enough that accredited media outlets such as Forbes and the Washington Post, have published them. Moser would buy graded cards on PWCC and break them out of their slabs. The cards under his care allegedly underwent any combination of trimming, chemical brightening, and pressing for wrinkles. He would then submit them to PSA to get better grades before consigning them to PWCC. He has made hundreds of thousands of dollars through this method, and PWCC has taken a juicy cut. We should note that many trimmers and card refurbishment experts consign cards at institutions like PWCC to remove their names from the sale. Therefore, they are not always privy to these efforts. We still do not know if PSA was in on this, more on that later, but for whatever reason, they did not catch hundreds of fraudulent cards submitted by Moser and sold on PWCC. PWCC is in no way the only company involved in this scandal. Many Moser cards have also popped up on Mile High Card Company and elsewhere. The FBI subpoenas PWCC. The FBI received complaints from collectors and began an investigation that fell under the auspices of Operation Bullpen. In July 2019, the federal agency subpoenaed PWCC. As the FBI into Moser, PWCC, and PSA, all parties involved began to fear prosecution. Therefore, the two companies announced they were cooperating with law enforcement. PWCC released a statement throwing Moser under the bus and absolving themselves. We are obviously very aware of the issues surrounding the cards submitted to us by Gary Moser. We understand that we are responsible for our part in this mess and will do all that we can to make it right in connection with Moser submitted cards, as well as other submitters who may have altered cards of which we auctioned. PWCC strenuously denied knowledge of Moser's antics. However, there is overwhelming evidence that they are lying. It appears that PWCC CEO Brent Hugens knew about and profited from Moser's alleged fraudulent activities. As we saw in the last video, in many cases, the cards were purchased with the PWCC account and Moser's account. So definitely had involvement. I had someone recently comment that it's not a big deal because it's only a small percentage of the cards where these bad actors are profiting immensely from it. But no, any amount of fraud by the company that you're trusting to authenticate and grade your cards is too much fraud. There shouldn't be any fraud. The FBI does not divulge details of their investigations. To the best of our knowledge, it seems that assurances from PWCC and PSA that they are cooperating with law enforcement made them drop the investigation. So it's hard to say what happened with that. Back to their dirty tricks. It appeared that PWCC is back at it. Take a look at this listing for a 2000 Pacific Crown Royale RC. It is a PSA 10. The members of the Blowout Forum have raised questions about its authenticity. Not coincidentally, these are the same members that broke the scandal in 2019. They're part of the self-proclaimed but highly efficient blowout detective agency, BODA, B-O-D-A. One member of BODA, 312-4508 on COMC, posted this GIF comparing Brady cards sold on PWCC with an unaltered one. So it takes a minute here. Ignore the fact that the signature on it is different. Might be a fake signature as well. Who knows? But you'll see here, basically the cut is what we're looking at. And you see that it stays extremely consistent all the way around, except for this right side, which when you flick back and forth, you can see that a piece of the card was clearly removed. How in the world is PSA not measuring this, or doesn't have one on hand that they can hold up to it? This isn't an old card where it has a different cut sometimes, where it's like hand cut or something. This is cut by a machine, it's stamped out, and it's going to be the same size every time. There's no way that much material is missing off one of them. especially when it was one that was resubmit. They should have a record of the card beforehand. They should immediately be able to bring up and know that this is the same card. There's computers that can do that. Very capable. I still don't believe in the AI grading crap, but you should be able to take an image. They all take images, and you should be able to compare the card and know it's the same card as the one that was previously submitted. Instead of taking down the listing, PWCC put the following disclaimer on it. Be advised that this item was previously listed for sale and a question was raised regarding the accuracy of the professional grade. This item was subsequently resubmitted to PSA for their technical review. Upon review, PSA confirmed that the grade is in conformity with PSA's current grading standards. The item is now being presented again on the marketplace. In other words, PWCC is claiming that they had the cards reviewed by PSA after the scandal broke. So someone's BSing here. Did they just slip it by PSA? Probably the case, but that kind of brings into question, is PSA doing wrong as well, or is that just incompetence? Because it's one or the other. There's no frigging way that should get by anyone. But it did. And there, as I say many times, the value in grading is not there. A repeating pattern, but that was not the only card allegedly subjected to this process. Another example is a 1948 Leaf Don DiMaggio card for sale as a PSA 7. The card looks suspiciously well cut even to the naked and untrained eye. However, it is even more remarkable for a series known for its centering problems and problematic color alignment. There are only 3 7s and nothing above an 8 for this card. Indeed, according to Blowout Forums member 3124508, it was sold in 2013 as an SGC 3 card, then reappeared on PWCC in its altered form in 2015. In 2021, PWCC asked for $17,500 for a card that sold for $358 in its unaltered form. So that's the kind of flip money that they're making off this scam. Not appropriate. I don't care if it's 3 cards that they've ever done. It's not. It's way more than that they've been caught for. God knows how many they actually altered. The card was eventually removed under pressure. After the post received a good deal of traction, the post was removed and the offending card was presumably returned to the PWCC vault. You can find several other examples on the Blowout Cards forum, as well as on the Net55 Baseball Vintage forums. There's the Brady card on the PWCC website. What PWCC is doing is pretty clear. If the good folks at Boda are correct, and they certainly have receipts, the company is taking trim cards that remain in their stock before the scandal broke and is now selling them. They believe they have found some sort of legal loophole in their cooperation agreement with the FBI. My strong gut feeling is that they haven't, and this will come back to haunt them. So I guess I think this article was before they actually got kicked from eBay, so maybe that'll be a future episode about PWCC and how they're no longer on eBay. PSA's role in the scandal. All right, the moment you've all been waiting for. I can't wait to hear from all you PSA Showmaster 69s in the chat. Sorry to tell you, but your beloved godsend super grading company makes mistakes or is a scammer 420, just like PWCC. PSA's role in the scandal. While most people refer to PSA as a grading company, authentication is equally important part of their job. PSA grading is a 3-step process: authentication, grading, encapsulation. According to the PSA website, authentication means a series of PSA graders reviewed your cards for authenticity. If genuine, PSA looks for evidence of doctoring, such as recoloring or trimming. They missed a whole lot of that. Therefore, when a card has been trimmed or altered in any other way, it is the grader's job to detect it. So when there's a card, a modern card that's missing a huge chunk off of it, it should show up right away. Otherwise, how are you supposed to detect trimming if the card isn't even the right size of the card? I know the holder doesn't hold it the same way as a traditional card, but have one on hand maybe have a stencil that you can put down or something, and make sure that all the card is still there. Hundreds of trim cards graded by PSA and the other major grading companies were sold at inflated prices on PWCC. With that in mind, it is no surprise that many collectors believe PSA was in on the card trimming scandal. Many also believe it continues to help dishonest auctioneers take advantage of collectors. I would agree. Auctioneers, typically pretty scummy. They want to get the most dollars for whatever they're selling, and they will sometimes bend the truth. They're not going to care if this thing was trimmed. It's not their responsibility. They can claim they didn't know. PSA received mass submissions from PWCC and others filled with altered cards. Considering that they are considered the leaders in authentication, many users have difficulty believing they are not in on the scam. Look at this video to get an idea of how jaw-dropping some of the PSA oversights are. So maybe that'll be a good follow-up as well. There's a cool YouTube video where someone has the side-by-side comparisons, much like the last video that I made, a little bit more straightforward. But we'll look at that another time. We know that this all sounds a bit like one of those lousy conspiracy movies where the plot goes all the way to the top. However, PSA has a lot to answer for in this scandal. So yeah, I mean, it's all channeling through that same place, and how they don't catch that many submissions and they allow that same person to keep submitting. So obviously they if they're catching something, there should be a flag on the account immediately saying, hey, this guy has previously submitted cards that were altered. Maybe it wasn't him, but we're going to like double check for all of this the next time they submit or any other time they submit. Didn't happen. Don't know how it didn't happen. You would think with the amount of money that people are spending on grading that would be a system that's in place, but it's not. Is PSA actually reviewing the grade reviewed by PSA cards? The short answer is we don't know. PSA has zealously avoided commenting on this scandal. I mean, there's probably to a certain extent that they're told not to, but at the same time there should be some sort of formal, I guess, announcement or apology concerning it if they're not to blame. If they are guilty of it, obviously they want to keep quiet, because if it's going to court or if the FBI is involved, then they don't want to incriminate themselves any more than they already have. So far, there is only circumstantial evidence of PSA involvement. We did a brief check and found that when the Dom DiMaggio card sold in 2018, it was in the same slab. This seems to hold for all the known Moser altered cards. The scandal broke the following year. Therefore, there is no evidence that PSA continued to grade PWCC trimmed cards following the scandal. Their SMR magazines stopped featuring ads for PWCC on their pages. That's probably pretty smart of them. However, we don't know whether PSA stopped accepting advertisements or PWCC stopped placing the ads. I would go ahead and say that PSA probably stopped accepting them, but that's just a guess. Nonetheless, if they are reviewing PWCC cards and legitimizing their practices, PSA has no excuse. PWCC has an alleged history of acting in bad faith, and PSA knows that. So that's the thing. They should stop grading anything for PW. If they know what's best in terms of public image, they shouldn't grade anything for Gary Moser. They shouldn't grade anything for PWCC or anyone affiliated with PWCC in general, if they want to save their own reputation at all. I don't know. Outside of that, public statement would be ideal. I think honesty is probably the best policy. It just looks worse if you hide things, and surely PSA can hide behind the fact that they don't want to give out customer information or something like that. But when somebody's committing as much fraud as PWCC, maybe you want to. They have been pretty active, as we've seen on Gary's Pokemart. Not the same Gary as Gary Moser, the card trimmer, but deactivating his card that was stolen and submit before the release of the actual set. So they have done some good, but I think there's a long way to go with gaining the complete trust of myself and anyone else who takes the time and effort to look into this bad stuff that's going down. They should want no part in it and should clear their name, in my opinion. What this means for collectors: do not buy cards from PWCC. No, probably not. Especially not any of the ones that are in the value range that can be doctored, or that it's worth their time to doctor them. We cannot stress this enough. If there was doubt in the past that unscrupulous sellers had duped them, there is no doubt at this point they are bad actors. We tend to think of scammers as shady people on the margins of the hobby. However, the sale of trim cards had become such a severe problem that the FBI invested considerable human resources into the investigation. After being subpoenaed, PWCC announced it was cooperating with the feds to bring the scandal to an equitable conclusion. PWCC refunded buyers. Obviously not their choice, and I don't think they did that originally. That wasn't their intention. But when they get the pressure put on them, I'm glad to see that the buyers were refunded for that. The company appeared to be on the straight and narrow. However, if these reports are true, PWCC is simply an untrustworthy repeat offender. So here we go. How to protect yourself from the grade reviewed by PSA scam. Do not buy from PWCC ever. Be careful buying cards favored by Gary Moser. They include common vintage cards such as Topps rookies, but his specialties include the T206 set, 1948 Leaf, 1952 Burke Ross, 1948 through 1954 Bowman, 1951 through 1955 Parkhurst, and others. So this is a shame to see someone ruin certain eras or certain cards for people, and basically going to hurt the value of anyone that owns these, almost certainly, with the looming threat that it's a modified card. Pretty terrible. Almost similar to the Gold Star dogs in Pokemon with all the stolen copies. Pretty big hit to those. Here we go. Search for the PSA certification of any card you're bidding on and check if PWCC has ever owned it. That's a pretty good way as well. A lot of extra effort because of some wrongdoers in the hobby. And hopefully they get what they deserve, some jail time, and to whatever extent they can refund the people that got burned would be ideal. But it seems like where they had to refund the buyers here, good. Trust but verify before you buy expensive vintage cards. Have a look at other cards in the series to see how they compare. Stay alert to the work of people on Blowout forums and also on the Net54 baseball forum. They uncover a lot of these scams and are constantly working on finding more. We're going to do the same thing in Pokemon. If you guys see anything that's sketchy, let me know. I'd love to make a video on it. The more people we can make aware, the better. The more people that are doing even sketchy things like fake giveaways, as we've seen on the channel. Happy to get rid of people like Fahim, expose them to the greatest extent, show what a terrible person they are, and save the community. If we can prevent this stuff before it even happens, before it gets to be such a problem that this PWCC, Gary Moser, maybe PSA to an extent, if we can prevent that before it even happens or as it starts, everyone's going to be better off for it. Thanks guys for tuning in. Join the Discord. See you next time.